All right, everybody. Okay, so this week's Torah portion, Nitzavim Vayelech. We are getting to the very end of the Torah. Now, there are some distinct aspects of this week's parsha. Number one, that it is always going to be the last Torah portion before the new year, the last parsha of the year. Right. So, that's one way in which Nitzavim stands out. Now, interestingly, it's always Nitzavim. Vayelech will only get added to Nitzavim if there is not a week, a Torah portion that comes, a Shabbos that comes between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. If there is, then we hold off with Vayelech, because then we'll read Vayelech between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. There's always a Torah portion between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And then we'll read Ha'azinu between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and hold the last Torah portion, V'zot HaBracha, for the last day of Sukkot, Simchas Torah. However, if there is not, and most oftentimes there really isn't space to put a Shabbos in between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, then we read Nitzavim Vayelech together this week, Ha'azinu between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then hold V'zot HaBracha till the last day of Sukkot. So really, at this point, we are dictated in terms of the format of our Torah portions by what gets us to Simchas Torah with the reading V'zot HaBracha, only having V'zot HaBracha left to read. So now you know we're that close, as it were, to the end of the Torah and restarting it anew. That we are taking the calendar into consideration in terms of how the Torah portions that we're going to read this week. So this week is Nitzavim and Vayelech. It's a double Torah portion, and if you're saying, a double Torah portion, it's going to be quite long. The answer is actually no. Nitzavim and Vayelech together are shorter than 80% of the Torah portions in the entire Torah. This double Torah portion is shorter than 80% of all Torah portions. It is together they will have a grand total of under 80 verses. Most Torah portions are somewhere around 100 verses. Nitzavim and Vayelech together are under 80. Because Nitzavim is the second shortest Torah portion, and Vayelech is the shortest Torah portion in the entire Torah. So, two very short Torah portions coming together this week, and yet it would be a mistake to assume that because we have such short Torah portions, that there isn't a lot to discuss. That is an incorrect assumption. Plenty to discuss in this week's Torah portion. And so we're going to get into it. Let's first of all remind ourselves where we are holding. At this point, Moshe Rabbeinu is almost at the end of his life. In fact, by the time he finishes saying what he will say here, he only has two things left to tell the people. Ha'azinu, he's going to sing them a song. And then, V'zot HaBracha, he's going to give each tribe a final blessing. Like a deathbed blessing, almost like Yaakov Avinu at the end of his life. So really, to a certain degree, this is the last quote unquote part of his regular speech, and then it's the song and the final blessing. So it's really poignant. This is a poignant moment, and in these words, in Nitzavim Vayelech, Moshe continues to do what he's been doing up until this point, which is to use very powerful rhetorical, philosophical tools to really embed within us a message uh, uh, that will last forever. And on both of those points, again, this parsha stands out. What do I mean by that? Number one, in the rhetorical tools, we've been talking about the contrasts that by saying something and then kind of having it right alongside its seeming opposite or the other end of the spectrum, then you draw attention to each because the difference is very stark. It's very black and white, right? And in this case, we have, again, the names of the double Torah portion itself speak to that contrast because they are quite literally the opposites of each other. What does Nitzavim mean? Nitzav. Nitzav means to stand, and not just stand, but stand firm, unmoving, unbending. How do you say a monument? Something that stands and will remain unchanged for a very long time.
I forget, but yes.
Matseva.
Matseva.
Matseva, from the word nitzav. The word nitzav, again, means to stand, but not just stand, really to stand in a way that is remarkably unmoving and unchanging. And what's the very next word? And what's the name of the next Torah portion?
Nitzavim.
Vayelech. What does Vayelech mean?
Walk. To walk.
Move, to go. And he went. Yeah. Nitzavim means to stand firm and don't move. And Vayelech means?
Go ahead.
And he moved. So again, remarkable contrast, right? We had that again last week. Ki tetzei, ki tavo, right? When you go out, when you come home. And then we have Nitzavim, stand firm, don't move, Vayelech, and he moved. Right? Again, a remarkable contrast that is either, you could either look at it and say, that's an interesting bit of trivia, that it seems to be that one name of a Torah portion is so different and the opposite of the very next one, and you could just kind of say, remark on it, yeah, that's interesting, and carry on, or you could understand there's a very deep and powerful message there. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And by a moment, I mean, let's talk about it right now. Because I was going to make the second point about how this Torah, Moshe is leaving a message that will not be forgotten, and we're going to come to that in a minute. But before we come to that, I want to actually double down a little bit on what we're talking about. Nitzavim Vayelech. Why is this more than just names of a Torah portion? Why is this so significant? As we said, in general, the names of the Torah portion are not just placeholders, place markers, or labels for us to just be able to identify one Torah portion. They encapsulate, like the title and the name of anything, encapsulates the very nature. And here we are at the crucial end of the Torah. Every word here is weighed. These are Moshe's last words, etc. And we decide to name one parsha Nitzavim, and the very next parsha by its exact opposite, Vayelech. And so I will ask you, the Jewish people are a unique people in the sense that we are a people who have a very long heritage, very long legacy. We take many things very, very seriously. Things are very important to us. I mean, we're the type of people that have an exact amount of times that we smack a what's it called? A willow branch on the ground, right, on a seemingly random day of a holiday, and it's very exact, and yet that's a minhag, and then we're not even talking about halacha. Don't just get us even started on halacha about how exact we are in every last aspect of halacha, etc. Of every last mitzvah, of every last holiday. We take our Yiddishkeit very seriously. It's a lot of things that define the Jewish people. So if I had to ask you, what character trait defines the Jewish people? Is it that we are journeying, that we are, as I say, not the wandering Jew or the journeying Jew, that we are constantly on the move? Or is it that we stand firm and unbending in the face of the vicissitudes of time and
Yes.
world events, etc.? Which one of them is the hallmark of the Jewish people? Are we an ancient people?
Why, do we have to pick
Or are we
one
a
this time?
progressive? Are we a progressive people? Are we a people that stand firm? Or are we a people on the move?
What, do we have to pick one?
In other words,
all three. I think all three.
Right, it's all.
In other words, well, I may have used multiple adjectives, but two primary options here. Are we Nitzavim or are we Vayelech?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
Yes. I just had an argument with someone who told me that the Israelis should have stopped right after Hamas, did their awful thing. And I said, no, why? They don't want to have to do it again and again and again and again. What are you, crazy?
All right.
Now I'm going to tell
Before we
why.
move, yeah, but we're. I don't disagree with the specific application that you just brought. However, I'm going to reel it back to a more broader kind of position, because yes, does it apply in the case in kind of current events? Yes, of course it does. But let's first explore it in a more broader sense before we get specific. Let's first take what seems to be the less intuitive one. We'll start with actually the less intuitive one before we do the more intuitive. Many people say about the Jewish people that we are an ancient people. We are an old people. We are a fossil and a relic. Right? Generally, when you see any type of kind of iconography, if somebody would paint a picture of the Jewish person or the wandering Jew, you don't see the spry, young, fashionable guy or gal. What you generally see is the stoop-over fellow with this long beard, who's seen a lot or whatever it is, because there is this understanding that it's not just they're trying to depict the quote-unquote righteousness of the Jewish people. When they're doing that, they are there's a certain amount of dismissiveness or derision. Says, you guys had your heyday, you're all done, you're all washed up, you're old, you're a relic of the past that was trying to hold on. In fact, there was a very well-known English historian named Toynbee, right, who debated Rabbi Herzog, it was Rabbi Herzog or Herzog, basically, not Rabbi Herzog. What's his name? I forgot. It was Weitzman. I have to double check who it was. But a very famous debate. I'm trying to remember because if anybody knows which one I am referring to, you can jump in over here.
Paula would know.
Right. Exactly. Her presence is missing. Weitzman, Herzog. Anyways, one of the original founding minds of Israel, and said that spoke about what he was involved in what could call a it was almost like a platitudinal dismissal of the Jewish people and their relevance by referring to them as almost like a fossil, which he was saying, and he was saying, I'm paying you guys a compliment. Fossil is a very important thing because it has tremendous historical value, and you learn a lot. But of course, the undercurrent or the implicit a point that he was trying to make is that you do not carry any modern relevance, to which and again, it's almost embarrassing that I remember the cynic's name, but I can't remember the champion, the one who responded to him and really went on what is considered one of the more classic and well remembered responses and soliloquies on behalf of the Jewish people, and it's recorded. I'm sure if somebody Googles it, I would. Otherwise, if I was using my laptop to do this Zoom session, I would be Googling on my cell phone off on the side. But I can't. I can't do it right now. But if anybody's a very famous figure, he went off on Toynbee. It was beautiful. It was powerful. It was cogent, and it very much resonated. It says the Jewish people are eternal. We will never be a fossil. In fact, long after the British Empire and the current United Kingdom will be a fossil, the Jewish people will remain vibrant and full of life, energy, and relevancy and impact in the world. We are never a fossil. We are never ancient. We are an eternal people because we are connected to an eternal Torah, a Torah that is always on the move, a Torah that is always relevant and is never left behind and is never in the back, but always is at the head, is always leading. And in fact, this hallmark of the Jewish people, that we are always on the move, that we are always journeying, that we never rest on our laurels, and that we will never be relegated to the dustbin of history, is the very first command that God ever gave. The very first Jew, which is
to Adam? No.
To Avram Avinu.
Okay.
At the start of the story, here we are nearly at the end of the Torah, and harkens back to the start of this journey, not the start of here Moshe is the about to be, about to enter the threshold of the Holy Land, right? And one could say, quote unquote, the end of the journey. The end of the journey. And he wants the Jewish people to understand two very important points. A, your journey did not begin 40 years ago when you left Egypt and started going through a desert. It began by saying Vayelech here. He reminds the Jewish people that the story begins where? All the way back to Abraham Avinu, to that moment where God said, Abraham Avinu lech lecha. And he's also reminding the people that your journey is not coming to an end. Vayelech, just as Avram Avinu was in the Holy Land, and God told him, Lech Lecha. Even when he arrived, first there was the stage he had to Lech Lecha to the Holy Land. But even once he arrived in the Holy Land, God told him, you will remain. Avram Avinu did not build a house, he remained in a tent, even upon arrival in the land of Canaan. Because the understanding was that this is a journey. He remains on a journey. When you wake up in the morning and you're looking up and you see a tent, you remind yourself you're on a journey. There's the story that's attributed to the Chafetz Chaim, one of the great scholars of 200 or so years ago. Others have said it in the name of various other great scholars, but I heard it originally in the name of the Chafetz Chaim, and so I will repeat it in the name of the Chafetz Chaim, and it fits with the way he chose to live his life. That there was a certain Jewish fellow who was quite successful and was themselves quite a righteous individual, and undertook a journey to go visit the great tzaddik, the Chafetz Chaim, and to receive his advice, insight. And so he takes on this journey to go all the way to the city of Poznan, where the Chafetz Chaim lived. The Chafetz Chaim was the name. It was not his actual name. His true name is Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagi. He was known as the Chafetz Chaim because that was his magnum opus, was the book that he titled the Chafetz Chaim, and so he became known as the Chafetz Chaim. That's quite common that when great scholars would write a magnum opus, it would become known by the name of that great work. So the Chafetz Chaim, he traveled to come visit the Chafetz Chaim. He arrives in the town, and he asked, where's the Chafetz Chaim? And he was shocked and dismayed to see that the Chafetz Chaim's home was a hovel, was truly just a shack. And when he knocks on the door and the Chafetz Chaim comes to open the door and he is invited in, he's not a single piece of furniture. The table is a piece of wood on top of a crate. The bed is a couple bales of straw on top of crates. And he's looking around, and it really bothers him that this great tzaddik is living in such terrible squalor. And at one point or another, he can't contain himself anymore. And he looks at the Chafetz Chaim and he's incensed. And he says, Rabbeinu, where is your furniture? To which the Chafetz Chaim looks at him, and this proves that with the bona fides of the Chafetz Chaim, the bona fides of the Chafetz Chaim, because he answered a question with a question, as every good Jew does. And he turns to this Yid and he says, and where's your furniture? Why would I have furniture? Why would I have furniture here with me? I'm just passing through. Which the Chafetz Chaim smiled and says, and so am I. And this is the message that Moshe wants to impart to the Jewish people, that we're always on the journey. Vayelech.
That's the message of the Sukkah.
It is the message of the Sukkah. It is absolutely the message of the Sukkah. And here at the end, or seemingly end of the journey, Moshe says, hear me when I tell you the journey continues. We're always on the move because the world needs to move forward. We can never stand pat. We can never rest on our laurels. Whatever we have done till now is not enough. And we need to constantly move. And that is why we will never become dusty, because we're not settled enough in one place to become dusty. And while the English, and it's funny for a man who is a historian, and an English historian of old types of people, to talk about dusty past. And you look, and it was remarkable that Israel, if you would say, of the two nations that look backward, you have England versus Israel. And which one of them seems to be lost in their dusty and perhaps once glorious past? And whether he says this or not, well, we can now say, because this was a debate back in the close to the beginning, the founding of the state of Israel. But here we are, all this time later, and we look at this, and we now see, obviously, we can scoff at this point and say the temerity of an English historian to accuse the Jewish people and the state of Israel of being lost in the past and becoming dusty. Right? This is obviously to tell the startup nation that they're the ones lost in the past is incredibly ahistorical.
Well,
And,
it was wishful thinking.
what I was going to say is, did you ever get the list of what, when they say they don't need the Israelis, that they want to take away their phones? What are the whole list?
Oh yeah, it's a meme that says that somebody says, I refuse
If you want
to
a
use
boycott,
says I refuse to use anything made in Israel. He goes, okay, give me your phone, give me your this, give me your that. Like the guy's basically stripped.
so I actually saw something really cute. It says anybody who wants to boycott Israel, then they have to stop using the phones, but we're happy to give you beepers.
That's good. That's modernized.
That's
That's
But
America.
But either way, coming back to this point. So the hallmark of the Jewish people is the fact that we are eternal, and therefore ever moving and ever progressing. And not only are we moving, but we are the leaders of the progress. Progress is the hallmark of the Jewish people. But importantly, while to the rest of the world, that's perhaps what's not intuitive enough, right? That's where the world makes a mistake about us. Where we oftentimes make a mistake about ourselves is that we forget that there's the other side of the coin. That eternal also connotes something else. Not just ever progressing, ever moving, ever journeying, but also immovable.
Nitzavim.
And at the same time that we are Vayelech, we are also absolutely Nitzavim. We are immovable and unshakable, firmly rooted and fully anchored. And that is a truly remarkable duality of the Jewish people. That you would say it has to be either or. Either you're Nitzavim or you're Vayelech. If you're Vayelech, you can't be Nitzavim. You're either moving or you're not. You're either immovable or you're not. Are we moving or are we immovable? Are we Vayelech or are we Nitzavim? Are we the hallmark of progress or are we the hallmark of antiquity?
Yes.
We are the hallmark of and bastions of what was, and we are the bastions of what will be. We
So-
don't, and the reason we can progress in the way we do is because we remain firmly anchored in what we were.
So how do you say, what's the first command to the people? What was the command? Is it just that we
The
are
first command to Abraham was Lech, was to go.
to go?
But
Leave your country, leave your people, leave your family, get up and go to a land I will show you.
first he says, before he says all the rest of the words, those words, the word after Lech is Lecha. Go to yourself, to who you always were. Go to who you always were. In Yiddishkeit, in Judaism, we progress because we never leave who we were behind. Because we are Nitzavim, that gives us the power to be Vayelech. Because that's, as we said, that is the difference between somebody who is journeying and somebody who is wandering. When you are unmoored and unanchored, without a direction, without a point of origin and a point of destination, then you're just wandering. But if you are firmly rooted, Nitzavim, to the point where nothing can unmoor you, nothing can unanchor you, then you can in fact move, and move with meaning, and move with purpose, and lead. And that is the Jewish people. Israel is at the same time the most progressive, the most modern, the most cutting edge, and simultaneously the oldest and most ancient and most preserved. As I said, what a powerful, powerful thing I experienced, as I said, an anecdote that occurred with my own child in front of my eyes, which was so meaningful to me. Because if you think about it, this doesn't exist in any other culture or any other society. It doesn't. That we were sitting there at the top of Masada when we were going on the trip, the Bar Mitzvah trip for my son Shua. And we're there as a family, we're at the top of Masada, we're showing them all these things. And we come up to a certain place where they discovered, almost like the Dead Sea Scrolls, they discovered old scrolls and texts in this space. And they have a placard in which they had photographs of these scrolls that they had discovered. And in front of us was a very large tour group from some church or whatever it is, a Christian tour group. And the tour guide, clearly a very well-versed individual, right? Somebody who's spent a lot of time becoming a professional tour guide, is telling all the people that are part of the tour about the significance of the space, that over here is where they found all these remarkably preserved parchments with writings on it that date back over 2,000 years. To give you a sense, that's almost 10 times the age of the United States. Right? When we have a document, we're so proud that if you go to the American Museum, the Museum of Smithsonian of American History, they have the first Old Glory, right? The first original flag that Betsy Ross sewed, right? And it's frayed, and this, right? And it's preserved because they have to keep it out of the light and out of the air because it's otherwise will disintegrate and all this. We're very proud of it. We're very proud of it. And my great-grandfather was alive before that flag was ever fabricated. America is a very young country. Here is a photograph of parchments that are thousands of years old, with text that are from 2,000 or so years ago. And one of these, the tourists turns to the tour guide with awe and says, because the writing is remarkably clear, it's remarkably legible. And he turns to this tour guide and says, are you able, because you are clearly a scholar and a learned person on these things, can you read any of this language? It's 2,000-year-old text, a 2,000-year-old language. And the tour guide says, yes, I can actually. And he points out the letters he recognizes. He says, right there is the Hebrew letter Shin. And right over here is the Hebrew letter Mem. And he's pointing out, they're all, wow, it's remarkable. Wow, look at that. He's quite impressed with this incredible learned man who's able to read ancient texts, point out letters, individual letters from ancient texts. And my Maishla, that then 9 years old, walks over and he looks and says, oh, share my life. And he just rattles off the whole thing. And these 30 to 40 tourists are looking at there, and their minds were blown. Here comes this little grade school kid, and he just rattles off ancient hieroglyphics.
And I bet you the tour guide didn't know.
Yeah, no, the learned tour guide was able to identify
the letters.
Can you imagine if a tour guide was able to point out this letter in hieroglyphics or this letter in ancient Assyrian, you would be impressed.
Right.
But here comes this grade schooler, and he's just reading it fluently, better than most kids can speak. Well, better than most of these kids, the kids in the tour group can read English. He's reading off this ancient language.
Such a good story.
What does this tell you? This speaks to this remarkable truth about the Jewish people. Nitzavim, we don't budge. We are a people that have preserved our heritage and our history and our legacy over the course of thousands of turbulent years in the face of fire and genocide and destruction and exile. We have taught our children by hook or by crook to be Nitzavim, that our heritage will remain unbent and unbroken. We will not allow it to be unmoored or unanchored. And as we are doing Vayelech, and as Israel is leading the world in cutting-edge progress, and as the Jewish mind and the Jewish philosophy teaches the world the most progressive values, we are able to do so because at the same time that we are Vayelech, we are also Nitzavim. And what an important message right before Rosh Hashanah. We're about to start another year, and every year we have an obligation, a mandate to move forward. What was good enough in 5784 is no longer good enough. We're going to be moving forward into the year 5785. And in the year 5785, we commit to you, God, that we will progress as time progresses, as our journey progresses, because the world needs our progress. And we will do it in the only correct way, which is that we will never lose our tether to where we came from, who we are, what is our anchor and our tradition. When we will be lech, it'll be lech lecha. We will remain true to who we are. We will remain true to our legacy. It will be a Yiddishkeit as we move forward with our Yiddishkeit. It will be a Yiddishkeit that will be eminently recognizable to Avraham Avinu, to Moshe Rabbeinu, etc. And yet it will be entirely unique in a way that no other generation that came before us has ever done it. And that is the dichotomy, that is the duality, and honestly, that is the unity of our Yiddishkeit, because that's always been the way. Nitzavim, and Vayelech simultaneously. We all this is who we are. Most people in existence would consider this a paradox. And we know that there's no other way. And anybody who's tried it any other way, those who have not journeyed with the Yiddishkeit, have in fact been relegated to the past. And those who have tried to reform or reconstruct Yiddishkeit have lost their way and have become unmoored and unanchored.
Correct.
We are Vayelech, but we are only Vayelech because we are Nitzavim. So everybody here has to ask themselves, in what way will I progress in my eternal Yiddishkeit? My progress in my unbending and unmoving Yiddishkeit. Because here's something fascinating. If something's truly infinite, if it is truly limitless, it doesn't need to move to be able to continue expanding the horizon, because it's limitless. When something is limited, when something only is yay big, then if you need it to move over there, then you need it to separate from here and move. But if it is unending, then it can stay right here and continue to expand the horizon forever. If Torah is infinite, if the Jewish people are infinite, then the Torah can remain exactly where it is and continue to expand the horizon forever. And so all of us have to ask ourselves, what's my resolution this year? To progress in my Yiddishkeit in a way that leaves my Yiddishkeit firmly and unmovingly in place. Double down and progress with Yiddishkeit at the same time. Again, to most people, this would sound like paradoxical language. To Jews, this makes perfect sense. And we have to think about it. That's the mandate of this week's Torah portion, the last Torah portion before Rosh Hashanah. In what way are you going to be Vayelech? And what you can do so confidently, you can move forward confidently because you are Nitzavim, because you're firmly anchored. Because your Yiddishkeit is unmoving and unbending, uncompromising, and therefore can expand. I can expand the horizons of my Yiddishkeit. Everybody will have to answer that question for themselves. But in the meantime, wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Beautiful.
Shabbat Shalom. And
For those that are,
Rabbi, I
yes,
got your phone message, Rabbi, and I think I understand what you meant about the 2 emails and the flyer. So I got the flyer. That's what you wanted, right?
yes, correct. And if you can get that to
Vicky.
remind me her name, to Vicky.
Yes.
Also,
Bye.
we are a reminder to everybody. But we're reminding everybody this Sunday we're doing the speaking about Torah and its eternal, etc. We'll be welcoming the Mok Baron Torah. Everybody, please make a special effort to come out 11:30 a.m. on this Sunday to come celebrate the welcoming of the Torah to the community. All right, everybody. All the best.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.